Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions, the mystery of the Nazca Lines, a message to the gods or a map for ancient pilots. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. The Nazca Desert in southern Peru is one of the driest places on Earth, where almost nothing has changed for thousands of years. The surface of the desert preserves whatever is placed upon it. Someone in antiquity understood this. Between approximately 100 BC and 800 AD, the Nazca people scraped the surface of the desert floor, removing a thin layer of dark iron-oxide-coated pebbles to reveal pale yellow-gray ground beneath, to create one of the most extraordinary and debated sets of markings ever made by human hands. The result is a landscape covered in hundreds of perfectly straight lines, extending for kilometers, geometric shapes including spirals and trapezoids hundreds of meters across, and enormous animal and plant figures whose full outline can only be perceived from altitude. A hummingbird 93 meters long, a condor with a wingspan of 134 meters, a spider 46 meters across, a monkey with a carefully coiled tail. Each image is constructed in a single continuous unbroken line, a technical constraint voluntarily imposed on figures of this scale. The Nazca people had no aircraft. They left no written explanation. The figures are not obviously visible from the surrounding hills, yet they are flawlessly proportioned. How the Nazca designed, laid out, and constructed images of this scale on the ground, and for whom they were intended to be seen, has never been conclusively explained. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the wider world of ancient technological anomalies, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Ancient technical knowledge is remarkably vulnerable. It lives in the hands of craftsmen, in the minds of engineers, in the institutional memory of workshops and guilds. When a civilization collapses through invasion, plague, climate change, or internal conflict, that knowledge can vanish within a single generation. There is no guarantee that what is written down will be preserved, and much ancient knowledge was never written down at all. It was transmitted orally, apprentice to master, in a chain that a single catastrophe could permanently sever. This vulnerability helps explain what might otherwise seem impossible, that the ancient world possessed capabilities we did not recover for centuries or millennia. The Romans knew how to make self-healing concrete by mixing volcanic ash with seawater. When the empire fell, the recipe was forgotten. Medieval European builders worked with inferior materials for over 1,000 years before the technique was rediscovered through analysis of surviving Roman structures. The knowledge did not disappear because it was suppressed or hidden. It simply died with the people who held it. Apply this principle more broadly, and the anomalies of the ancient world become less mysterious, not in the sense of being explained, but in the sense of being plausible. If Rome could lose a concrete formula for a millennium, what else might have been lost? What might advanced cultures in earlier epochs have discovered and then lost, leaving only fragmentary traces, a strange artifact here, a suggestive diagram there, that later generations would struggle to interpret? This is the question at the heart of every anomalous discovery from the ancient world. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. and patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter, the core evidence surrounding the Nazca Lines, a message to the gods or a map for ancient pilots, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Nazca Lines were created by the Nazca culture of Peru between approximately 100 BC and 800 AD. The corpus includes more than 800 straight lines, 300 geometric figures, and over 70 animal and plant designs. They are formed by removing reddish iron-oxide-coated pebbles to expose lighter subsoil beneath. A technique requiring minimal technology, but enormous labor and precision. The Nazca Desert averages less than 10 millimeters of rain annually, preserving the geoglyphs across more than 2 millennia. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes, but as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the figurative geoglyphs include a hummingbird 93 meters long, a condor with a wingspan of 134 meters, a spider 46 meters across, a monkey with an elaborate spiral tail approximately 90 meters long, and a pelican measuring 285 meters. Each figure is constructed in a single continuous unbroken line, meaning the entire outline was traced without doubling back, a remarkable technical constraint voluntarily imposed on images of this scale. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The Nazca Lines were designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1994. German mathematician Maria Reich devoted her professional life to studying and protecting the lines from 1946 until her death in 1998. Reich lived for decades in the Nazca Desert and produced the most detailed early surveys of the line system. She advocated tirelessly for their preservation against threats from agriculture, mining, road construction, and tourist vehicle incursions onto the desert surface. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the construction technique is straightforward. Workers removed the upper layer of dark reddish pebbles, piling them to the sides to create low borders visible at oblique angles. The exposed pale subsoil below forms the light-colored lines. Experimental archaeology has demonstrated that small teams of workers using wooden stakes, cords, and simple tools could replicate the geometric precision of the lines without sophisticated equipment, suggesting the construction method required organization and labor rather than advanced technology. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of a research team from Yamagata University in Japan, led by Masato Sakai, applied artificial intelligence image analysis to high-resolution aerial and satellite imagery to identify previously unknown geoglyphs. In 2019, the team announced the discovery of 143 new figures, substantially expanding the known corpus. Subsequent AI analysis has continued identifying additional geoglyphs as processing techniques improve. Many of the newly identified figures are smaller than those found by ground survey and were invisible to conventional aerial photography. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. Maria Reich proposed the lines functioned as a giant astronomical calendar, with straight lines pointing toward the rising and setting positions of celestial bodies at significant dates. Gerald Hawkins's statistical analysis found that while some lines do point toward astronomical targets, the proportion is not significantly greater than random chance given the large number of lines in the system. Reich's astronomical theory is now considered partially valid but insufficient as a complete explanation for the full geoglyph corpus. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological errors. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Nazca Lines, a message to the gods or a map for ancient pilots. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Maria Reich argued throughout her career that the Nazca Lines constituted a vast astronomical calendar, with straight lines marking the horizon positions of the sun, moon, and key stars at solstices, equinoxes, and significant dates in the agricultural year. In this interpretation, the geoglyphs served a practical calendrical function, allowing farmers and priests to track seasonal cycles. Hawkins's statistical analysis weakened but did not destroy the astronomical hypothesis, and some lines do demonstrably point towards significant celestial events. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence. But it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that Erich von Däniken proposed in his 1968 book Chariots of the Gods that the straight Nazca Lines were runways constructed for alien aircraft, and that the figurative geoglyphs were signals to extraterrestrial visitors. This interpretation is comprehensively rejected by archaeologists, geologists, and aviation engineers. The desert's surface is composed of loose pebbles that would collapse under any aircraft weight. The lines vary in width irregularly, and no physical evidence of aircraft or landing activity has been identified. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that anthropologist Johann Reinhard proposed in 1985 that the Nazca Lines served as ceremonial pathways walked during rituals petitioning mountain deities for water, reflecting the Andean tradition of sacred landscape traversal. In this interpretation, the geoglyphs were not designed to be viewed from above, but to be walked through. David Johnson later proposed the lines point to underground water sources. Both theories are now considered more plausible than astronomical or extraterrestrial explanations by active researchers. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Nazca Lines, a message to the gods or a map for ancient pilots, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes astronomical surveys of the Nazca Line system have confirmed that a subset of the straight lines do align with sunrise or sunset positions at the solstices and equinoxes, providing partial support for Reich's calendrical hypothesis. However, Hawkins's statistical analysis established that the number of astronomically aligned lines is not significantly greater than would be expected by chance in a system containing over 800 lines pointing in many directions across a flat desert landscape. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented archaeological excavations alongside and within the geoglyph zone have recovered Nazca ceramics, textile fragments, and food remains deposited in contexts consistent with ceremonial gatherings. The presence of these materials supports the interpretation of the lines as venues for ritual activity rather than purely visual or astronomical markers. Some ceramics were deliberately broken and fragments scattered along the lines, consistent with ritual offering destruction documented in other Andean ceremonial contexts. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the Nazca region receives virtually no rainfall, and agriculture depended entirely on underground water sources channeled through an elaborate pre-Columbian irrigation system known as puquios. Water was existentially important to Nazca society, making water-related religious ritual the most plausible context for major communal construction projects. David Johnson's survey mapped correlations between the directions of some lines and the locations of underground water sources, providing partial physical support for the water ceremony interpretation. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Nazca Lines, a message to the gods or a map for ancient pilots. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries: why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Yamagata University team's ongoing AI-assisted survey has transformed understanding of the Nazca geoglyph corpus, expanding the known number of figures substantially beyond what ground survey and conventional aerial photography had identified. The water ceremony interpretation proposed by Reinhard and developed by subsequent researchers is now the dominant explanation among active scholars, supported by the correlation between Nazca's social structure, the region's dependence on underground water, and the ritual landscape traversal tradition documented across the Andes. Drone mapping has enabled photogrammetric documentation at previously impossible resolution. The most pressing concern is conservation. Vehicle incursions, tourist development, squatter settlements, and agricultural encroachment all pose active threats, and portions of the system have been damaged within the past decade. The Peruvian Ministry of Culture and UNESCO are engaged in active monitoring and enforcement. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Nazca Lines, a message to the gods or a map for ancient pilots. From the historical record, through the physical evidence across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Nazca Lines ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process, and the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.